I found out on an ordinary Sunday, the kind that smells like laundry and old coffee, when a receipt slipped out from between the cushions of our couch. It was for a hotel and unfamiliar name, a late-night charge, and a cell number I didn't recognize. For a moment, I stared at the paper as if it might rearrange itself into something harmless. It didn't. My heart did a peculiar, cold flip, and for the first time in years, the house felt like a stranger's. Her name is Aisha. We built a life that looked solid from the outside, a tidy house. Shared errands, inside jokes, the predictable rhythm of mornings and evenings. I trusted her the way people trust the weather, automatic, unquestioning. So the discovery hit like a fissure that ran straight through everything I believed about us. Denial was my first move. Maybe she'd stayed overnight for a surprise birthday party for a friend, I told myself. Maybe the number belonged to a colleague. I let my imagination stroll down every plausible explanation like a man coming up with excuses for a flat tire. But when I found other things, messages with a tone that was not friendly, lipstick on a collar she wore that morning, an unexplained scent on her scarf, the patchwork of excuses unraveled. Confrontation felt like a blunt instrument. I could imagine the scene, raised voices, pleading, accusations that would echo off the walls and change nothing. Instead, I folded the receipt into my wallet and kept my voice steady. I listened to her say she loved me, to the casual stories about her days, to the little grievances about groceries and bills. She spoke of the future with the same warmth I'd always heard. I smiled and planned. Revenge, I decided, not the vengeful, cartoonish kind, but a precise, surgical undoing of the security she'd taken for granted. I wanted the truth to come from her own hands, to be a mirror she could not look away from. I wanted to reclaim my dignity without letting myself be consumed by fury. There would be no public shaming, no social media spectacle. I was not interested in spectacle. I wanted closure that felt like sunlight, clean, clarifying, and final. I began to gather details the way an architect studies a building before demolition. I paid attention to her rhythms, when she left the house early, who she called, how she had texts even when I was in the same room. I followed patterns instead of people, an approach that kept my conscience lighter and my focus sharper. I watched without spying, recorded dates and oddities in a small notebook that felt almost comical in its simplicity. Each entry was a stitch in a net I was weaving. At the same time, I started tending to myself in ways I'd neglected. I went back to running in the mornings, the kind that clears the fog from your head and makes decisions feel less like storms and more like weather. I read again, not trashy novels, but books that taught restraint and strategy. I reconnected with friends I had let drift away because life with Aisha had seemed complete. They noticed a change, how I laughed without forcing it, how my presence in a room was quiet and certain. That steadiness is gravity. It pulls truth forward. I used small, deliberate moves. I let certain things slide that previously would have set me off. I stopped checking her phone. I changed passwords she might have guessed. I altered routines in ways that would make deception more difficult. I leaked nothing but observed everything. The goal was not to break her, but to let her break herself. When the moment came, it was private. As I had planned, I invited her to dinner at home, her favorite, simple dishes, a playlist of songs from early in our relationship. She arrived in the same way she always did, confident, smiling, the world unaware that the ground beneath her had shifted. We talked about nothing and everything, and I offered her a drink. We sat, and I poured us both a glass. Then, almost casually, I placed the notebook on the table. She blinked. "What's that?" she asked, trying to sound light. "Just something I've been keeping," I said. I folded it open at the right page and, without raising my voice, read aloud names, dates, times small, mundane facts that, when strung together, formed a pattern no lie could cover. I recited an arrival time that matched a hotel receipt. I mentioned the number on the receipt and the name in a message thread. I read text snippets that were affectionate in a way she never used with me. I saw her face go slack from amusement to panic to denial, shifting like weather. She reached for the notebook, trembling. Those can't be true," she said. "They are," I replied. And I watched her try every maneuver she always did. Charm, logic, blame. She accused me of being obsessive, of reading too much into coincidences. She tried to make me the villain, which is always a favored tactic of someone who has crossed a line and now must rewrite the story. I listened. I let her speak until the words ran dry. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why? Her silence filled the room first, then her reasons did small, selfish, and horribly candid. Boredom, the thrill of being desired, an accident that grew into more. She apologized, sometimes sincerely, sometimes like someone testing an angle to fend off a fall. But her apologies could not unwrite the ledger on the table. They could not reconstruct the nights I had slept trusting her warmth beside me. I could have raged. I could have thrown plates, called her family, filed for a divorce that same week. Instead, I made a choice that felt like mercy and mastery combined. I told her when she left that I needed space. I asked her to take a week away to think, to understand the consequences of the choices she had made. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply walked out with my keys and the small, ridiculous notebook in my pocket. The revenge, in the end, was not in exposing her to the world or in punishing her for its own sake. It was in refusing to be the person she could step on and discard. It was in rebuilding my life with intention, reclaiming my mornings, my friendships, my silence. It was in letting her face the emptiness she had made while I filled mine with things that mattered. I wanted her to know the certainty that comes when someone who loved you stops pretending. Over the following weeks, she texted, called, tried to cajole, and coerce. I did not block her. I saw no need for theatrical gestures. Instead, I replied sparsely, each word measured. I booked a few trips alone. I worked late on projects that had been waiting for my attention for years. And I learned to sleep without expecting someone else to anchor me. The house that once felt like hers as much as mine became mine again, but lighter, honest in its simplicity. People sometimes confuse revenge with retribution. Retribution wants to wound. Revenge, when done thoughtfully, can mean restoration. My plan wasn't to make her suffer, it was to extract myself from the harm she caused, and to create a life where her betrayal could not shadow me. There was a moral cost, of course. I had stooped to observation and manipulation, and I carried that weight. But the outcome was clear. I regained control, dignity, and the knowledge that I could survive an unraveling. Months later, when the dust settled, we met once more to sign papers that untied us gently. There was no spectacle. No mutual friends gathered to weigh in. Just two people acknowledging a fracture and deciding, calmly, to walk different ways. I left with peace, a cautious heart, and the quiet satisfaction that I had not let betrayal become my identity. The receipt that started it all is still in my wallet, folded differently now. It is a small, stubborn relic of a painful lesson. Trust is precious, and when it breaks, the only true power left is how you choose to respond.